Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my live streams. I originally sat down here behind the microphone to record a vlog, and I took two shots at it, and I didn't like either version. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to go live. We're just going to go live. Forget it. Forget this pre-recorded thing. We are just going to go live and we are going to just rip into this thing. And my signal looks to be a little grainy, but hopefully things will clear up here in just a moment. But I don't know that I've gone live on a non-trivia night in a very long time on a Saturday. Normally I save it up for the Sunday show. But like I said, I was sitting here trying to record something for you guys for the coming weeks and decided to just pull the trigger and go live. Forget about it. We are going to do it. We just do it live. We'll do it live. So let me say hello to some comic book soldiers that have joined here in the room. My brother from another mother, Wayne McDonald up in Canada, is here in the room. Chris Barrett is in the house. It's good to see you. Metropolis Kid is here. I don't know that I've seen you before, Metropolis Kid, so welcome to the live stream. It is definitely good to see you. Chuck, my man Chuck, is in here. It's good to see you, my friend. Wayne says he was just heading to bed when he saw the live stream. So, Chris Bear, we are not ending your live streak or your losing streak, my friend. It is going to continue at least until tomorrow for the Ready, Set, Go preview show. We will hopefully be giving away a really cool book, possibly to you. Anybody can be a winner at this point. Mark Spector is here. Comic Book NYC is here. City and Coleman is in the house. Andrea is here. Old Wolf JRO is here. TJ Slab Dragon. No, it is not Sunday. Superhero Cool. It is not Sunday. Zora, how you doing, my friend? He says he just got back from Galaxy Con and snagged some awesome signatures. So congratulations for that. So we're going to make this thing, I think, relatively brief. But I was sitting here recording a vlog and decided to do this thing live because the pre-recorded was not going the way that I had wanted it to go. So I said, forget about it. So there is a tendency, I think, in just society as a whole to draw comparisons between things. There are events and things that are happening around us that for some reason or another, we like to draw comparisons between current events and things that have happened in the past. And I think sometimes when these comparisons happen, they make sense, right? There are some comparisons that you can make that absolutely make sense. One of the comparisons that I've seen people make that I struggle with is comparing what is happening in the comic book market now to what happened in the 90s in terms of the collapse of the comic book market. People are looking at what's happening now with variants and they're basically saying it's just like the 90s. And I fundamentally disagree. And I think it's okay that we actually disagree because we can have a good debate about that. But this is not the 90s. No matter, how many variant covers they are producing, it is not just like the 90s. The collapse of the comic book market back in the 90s was multifactorial, right? And I've covered some of this in previous videos that I've done. It is multifactorial. It is not just one thing. Foil covers did not lead to the demise of the comic book market the same way variants won't do it now. It is an oversimplification of some complicated things, right? And so I see people making a comparison right now. TJ Watson is like apples and oranges. Well said. I see a comparison right now between people are trying to make between Amazing Spider-Man 300 and Spawn 300. And yes, they are the same. They are the same because they both have the number 300 in them. They are the same because the artist is the same. But they are not the same. But here's the thing. Why is it necessary to draw comparisons between these two things? Each one of them in their own respect is a monumental thing, and we shouldn't have to compare them in order to make one important, right? Because people are like Spawn 300 is just like Amazing Spider-Man 300. No, it's not. No, it's not. But that doesn't mean that Spawn 300 isn't significant, right? We don't have to compare it to something else to make Spawn 300 be significant. But as I said here, I kind of thought about some of the things that make these things very different because I think that they are. I think that they are very different. When you look at the market is much more complicated today than it was in 19. Whoa, well said, Chuck. It is not 1990. No matter how you slice it, it is not the same. Crypto comic stock. How you doing, my friend? So it is one is 30 years old. Well said. When you look at Amazing Spider-Man 300, Amazing Spider-Man 300, when it came out in 1988. Was it a big deal? I believe so. And I've been speaking to a couple of collectors from back in the day, and some of you are old enough to remember. Some of you guys can actually tell me this. It was a big deal. Amazing Spider-Man 300 was a big deal. It was a landmark issue. All, even number, big issues like that, 100, 200, 300 are all important, right? First and foremost. But that comic was also the first appearance of Venom. And I've never been the biggest Venom fan. I'm gonna be honest with you. I am more of a Venom fan now because of Donny Cates than I was back in the day. But that comic was the first full appearance of Venom. And Venom is arguably one of the more popular anti-heroes / characters in Marvel. Spider-Man, in my opinion, hands down is the number one, right? But I think Venom is a well-known character. But what happened even with the hype surrounding ASM 300? It took time for that book to raise in significance. It took time for that book to come up in value, right? That book didn't come out in 88 and be suddenly $700. That didn't happen. At least I don't think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Comic Crypto Stock said it had a print run of 500,000. Had a print run of 500,000. Well, thank you for that, brother. By the way, I definitely appreciate the actual data points versus the anecdotal. So thank you for dropping that in there. So ASM 300, it drops. It has a print run of 500,000, according to Comic Crypto Stock, who I trust and I believe. And it did pretty well, right? There was no doubt about that. To my knowledge, there was only one print run of Amazing Spider-Man 300. There have been reprints subsequent to that. Some of those reprints happened more than 10 years after. I think the Chromium cover actually came in 1998. That came out, and it's actually a really nice cover. That reprint of ASM 300 is actually a valuable comic. But to my knowledge, Amazing Spider-Man 300 only had one print run, right? And again, first appearance, landmark issue 300. Now, if you compare that to Spawn 300, Spawn 300 is important, right? You look at what Image and Todd McFarlane have done over the last 27 years. And it is nothing shy of great. You cannot besmirch what these guys have done. When Spawn 1 dropped, they sold 1.7 million copies of Spawn 1. That's huge. 1.7 million copies of Spawn number 1. It didn't break any records because I think X-Men number 1 with its multi-covers from Jim Lee actually has 8 million. So that was the record setter then, and I think still remains. Spawn number 1 was important, and it sold 1.7 million copies. Spawn has gone on for the last 27 years to be, I think, recreated the comic as a whole. Millions of copies of comics have been issued, 15 different languages, 120 different countries all around the world. Spawn is big for a certain group of people. Todd McFarlane and Image have done a great service, right? But 300, to my knowledge, outside of being a landmark issue, doesn't have the first appearance of Spawn. To my knowledge, it doesn't have the first appearance of any character. It's a landmark issue. It's not until 301 that you actually break the record. At 301 is where Spawn becomes the longest running creator-owned comic in the entire world. At 301. 300 is a landmark issue, but I think that that's it. That's not to say that it's not important. 300 and 301 of Spawn are important, but they're not Amazing Spider-Man 300. It's not the same. It is not the same comparison. And when you look at it, see, Chris Barrett is saying Spawn 300 will have a Spawn Semonite. That's cool. It's cool. It's still not the first appearance of Venom, right? It took 30 years for Venom really to raise and to rise in prominence and significance. Even if this character is introduced, that character you cannot compare that character on day one to Venom. You can't really compare that. So let's dig a little bit deeper. To my knowledge, right now, there are 10 different covers that are planned for Spawn 300. There are 9 covers planned for Spawn 301. What I don't know is the size of the print run. So it's going to be interesting to see how big the print run for 300 and 301 will be, especially considering the fact that they have as many covers as they do versus one for ASM 300, considering the fact that they may also do multiple print runs. That I think that these things are important. Um, Vika's like, I don't know how I feel about the name of the stream. I just spent a better part of a day putting spawns in Mylar. Comic Crypto Stock says the final record will be when Spawn ends. There you go. Randy Resnake, my man, says it will never be as big as ASM 300. Yes, and that's the thing, is that it is important. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Image, from Todd McFarlane, or from fans of Spawn. What is happening right now with Spawn 300 and 301 is important. And it's important enough that it can be its own thing. It doesn't have to be compared to ASM 300 because it's not the same. It's not a fair comparison. And so one of the other things that I did is I actually took a look at, and I've talked about this before, the dark side of third-party grading. And I'm a fan of third-party grading, as you guys know. But I took a look at the CGC census. My man Comic Crypto Stock basically said here that Amazing Spider-Man 300 had a print run of 500,000 copies. When you look at the CGC census, there were less than 20,000 ASM 300 on the entire census. Less than 20,000. Yes, there are other third-party gradings out there, but let's focus just on CGC. There are fewer than 20,000 across Universal, Restored, Signature Series on all of the CGC census. When you drill down, there are 0 10.0s. There are 900 and I want to say 53, maybe 953 9.8s. And then the numbers are kind of fluctuating after that, right? I didn't bother to look at a lot of those. What I can promise you is that there are going to be more 9.9s, possibly even 10s and 9.8s on the CGC census for Spawn 300 and 301 than there will be for Amazing Spider-Man 300. And the reason for that is because people are going to immediately be sending their comics in to be encapsulated and graded immediately. They're not going to pass go. They're going to go straight to CGC and other third-party grading companies to be encapsulated. And so you are going to have a sizable print run. You're also going to have a sizable number of comics that are actually graded in the higher ends versus Amazing Spider-Man 300. And this, again, is not to besmirch what is happening with Spawn. I'm simply saying, let's compare the two. You had this Amazing Spider-Man 300 be printed in 1988, and books have been lost over time. Large print run, 500,000. Books have been lost through time, through natural disasters, through whatever it happens to be. And now you have the books being graded. With Spawn, they are going to not pass go, and they are going to directly go into plastic and be preserved. These are not the same thing. You cannot compare the two, nor should you. Both are important, both are significant, but it is not the same kind of comparison. Steve is like, I love the gibbon over your shoulder. Randy is like, yes, they will, because grading wasn't around in the 80s with Amazing Spider-Man 300. Exactly. And that's one of the questions that I've kind of been asking is, where will the value for comics come in the future? Because it won't necessarily be driven by scarcity. Right now, it is driven by scarcity and by demand, but in the future, scarcity won't be an issue because your comics are not going to pass go. They are going to go directly into plastic and be preserved. So you won't have comics that are being lost in time, not as easily, right? I mean, there's still going to be things that are going to happen. But my point is, you're going to have comics that are never going to be read, never really going to even be touched by human hands, that are immediately going to go into plastic. Unlike back in the 80s, where you didn't necessarily have that. You had a lot of guys like Steven, who was here in the room, who, protects his comics like nobody's business. But you didn't necessarily have that in the 80s. You're going to have that now, though, K Bruin's talking about 9.8s with that janky paper he uses. And again, Vika, this is not to criticize. This is not to criticize. What I am saying is that it we should not compare Spawn to Amazing Spider-Man 300. It's not a fair comparison. They are not the same. They are both great on their own. We should not compare the two. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where I'm coming from, is that what is happening with Spawn and with Image and with Todd McFarlane is monumental. Being the longest running comic, creator-owned comic in history, I think is significant. And it's significant enough for Spawn 301 to stand on its own feet without being compared to Amazing Spider-Man 300. It's not a fair comparison. I mean, I guess, part of that is Todd McFarlane's own doing, in the sense that some of the covers that he has done, I think for Spawn 300 and 301, look like Amazing Spider-Man 300. But I think that this comic should be able to stand on its own 2 feet and stand on its own merits as a monumental piece of history for Image, for Todd McFarlane, and for Spawn fans. That's kind of the point of what I'm trying to make here. ASM 300 is the most graded comic ever. No book will ever break that record. You don't think? You don't think? I don't know. I think, what is it? Hulk 180 is what? Last I looked was like 11,000 or something like that on the census. And right now, Amazing Spider-Man 300 is at like 19 something. So a couple of people, Universe X is asking the question of who is comparing. There have been comparisons. I don't want to call people out. That's not who I am. But there have been comparisons that are being made. And my whole point is, maybe we should not make those comparisons. Spawn is a significant comic. It has a movie coming out. First movie, not so good. Second movie, hopefully, will be much better. But it is historically significant in its own right, and it's on its own merits, and not because of its association or similarity or comparisons to Amazing Spider-Man 300, which is, it's not the greatest cover ever. Let's be honest, right? It's not. But it is an important piece of Spider-Man history, so there you go. And Thomas is like, I was born in the 80s. Thanks for reminding us, my friend. I got you, Vika. Chris Bear is like, Todd likes to swipe his work. Yes, he does. He does like to swipe his work. Not like J. Scott Campbell, though. Ooh, I'm going to get a thumbs down on that one. Wayne McDonald's like, Thomas, you're so young. Yeah, man. I'm going to grade like 1 million copies of Jim Lee's X-Men, brother. There's enough of them out there, let me tell you. Lost Comic Junkie, thank you for stopping by, brother. Enjoy yourself. He says he has to do some adulting. So here's the thing. The thing is that I don't even know, honestly, the significance of 300, right? Because I think 301 is what breaks the record, and that's the one that's significant. 300, I don't know what the significance of that is. It's not the first appearance of Spawn, clearly, because Spawn appeared many decades ago. I don't know what the significance of that is. To me, in my mind, the meat of the Spawn thing is 301. That's the meat of it, to be honest with you. There's a lot of hype and pomp around what is happening with Spawn, but in my head, 301 is the one that actually makes sense. They have these covers coming out from J. Scott Campbell. Tom McFarlane has a couple, and they're nice. I'm not even gonna lie to you. These covers are nice, but 301 again seems to be where the meat is, not necessarily with 300. So Todd leads the league in comic work. It's a repeat of 228 in his THX cover. There you go. Spawn fans would just go grab a Spawn 1. CGC 9.9 is where you should be putting your money if you like Spawn. Ooh, well said. Well said, my friend. Newsstand. Can you get a newsstand at a 9.9? Are there newsstands, comic crypto stock? This dude knows his stuff. I'm gonna be honest with you. Are there newsstands at 9.9? My guess is that there has to be. But again, I think to your point, if you're a true Spawn fan, going out and getting that Spawn number 1, despite the fact that there was 1.7 million of them that had been printed, that's still where the meat and potatoes is. But let's go back to one of my videos from earlier this week. Head and heart. If your heart compels you to get this book, you should. If you are a Spawn fan, if you are a Todd McFarlane fan, if you are a fan of creator-owned comics, you should absolutely get Spawn 300 and 301. I am not ever going to tell you you should not do that. If your heart tells you to buy it, you should buy it. What I am saying and what I am suggesting is that you should not compare from a head perspective, compare the two because they are not the same. Now, that does not mean that Spawn 303, 301 in 30 years won't be the bomb, because it probably will be, but it won't still be Amazing Spider-Man 300. It still won't be that, because at that point, Venom will be 60 years old, and Venom is off to a very, very fast start. Here's the question. How many people were reading Spawn before all of the 300 talk and all of the movie talk? How many people were reading Spawn? My guess is a small number of people versus the number of people that were actually reading Spider-Man, for example, whether you're talking about volume 1 or the most recent volume. My guess is that there are probably more people reading Spider-Man than there are, and maybe even Venom, than people that are actually reading Spawn. I mean, Todd McFarlane hasn't even worked on the book in how many years? He is returning to do the 300 and record-breaking 301. Oh my gosh, I knew it. Pause. So this is not to besmirch anyone who is a big fan of Spawn, because we love all characters, including Spawn. She Spawn, I knew you were going to be here. I actually started to put a special mention in this video because of you. Kingpin Comics says he just picked up Spawn 298 and 301, and he's out. There you go. Chris said, I just kept rereading the same issue of Spawn. Mark Spector, isn't Archie the longest running independent book? No, because wasn't Archie owned by DC? Am I wrong in that? I thought Archie was owned by DC, and this is creator owned. But Mark Spector, you may have me at a loss there, my friend. You may have me at a loss there. My Spawn went, when it first launched, went 1 through 18, didn't buy another until issue number 220, and didn't buy another after that until 289 through the current. And again, this is not to besmirch Spawn. That is not what I'm attempting to do. I'm simply attempting to say that we should allow the historical significance of Spawn 300 and 301 to stand on its own merits. I'm saying that we should not feel compelled to compare it to Amazing Spider-Man 300 just because they both have the number 300 and because the artist is the same. That's what I'm saying. So I just want to make that to be clear. I don't want anyone to be like, Reggie hates Spawn. His last name is Simmons. I love anybody with the name Simmons. Even my buddy Chris Barrett, aka Chris Simmons, I absolutely love. Reggie, go to collect and check the data. Spawn 174 and 175 is where the money is. A ton of higher numbers have okay, yeah. So we'll have to look at that. We'll have to look at that, Joe, because you may have me at a loss, brother. I literally probably have 15 Spawn comics in my entire collection. And again, I'm not the biggest Spawn fan. I'm not the biggest Spawn fan. I'm not the biggest Venom fan either, to be honest with you. I'm a Venom fan as of late, but I have not been on the Venom train since day one. And there's a lot of people out there that absolutely love Venom. A lot of people out there love Spawn. Universe X says, whoever wasn't reading Spawn was reading My Little Pony. So I clearly must have been reading My Little Pony. Oh my goodness, you are hilarious. Randy Resnake, I see you, brother. I see you. Roughly low print runs, i.e. 50 or less, started around issue 141. Roughly low print runs around 50,000. So She Spawn did the same. It sucked over here in Ireland. Almost all comics have to be online, as we hardly get any comic shops over here. Wow. Sorry, Connor. So Kingpin Comics is pointing out that Spawn 299 drops this week. And I want to say that 300, I want to say drops August 28th. I think that's what I saw online, was that it actually drops August 28th. So Caleb Comics Smurf Murphy. ASM will always be better than Spawn. I'm not gonna jump on that. But look behind me. Again, I think that we can draw comparisons all day, but I want the comparisons to actually be fair comparisons where it makes sense. And in the case of people comparing Spawn to Amazing Spider-Man 300s, I struggle with that a little. And again, I think that what is happening with Spawn, right? That, millions of copies have been produced. They started off with 1.7 million copies being produced of Spawn number one. There is a lower number of newsstand copies out there. So if you can get newsstand copies of Spawn number one, that is definitely a good way to go, because you're not in that group of the 1.7 million, or at least you're in the minority of that. But this is a creator-owned comic that basically said to the market, we as creators need to be in control of the comics that we create. And that's what I like about what Image did back in the 90s. I was one of the guys that bought a bunch of the Image stuff, just not Spawn. But I applaud the creator-owned thing that Todd McFarlane sparked back in the 90s with Jim Lee and with all the others, Rob Liefeld included, even though I, talk a little trash about him. I applaud what they are doing. And what I would say is I just want these guys to receive the recognition that they deserve for the milestones that they hit, independent of anything else that is out there. So Comic Crypto Stock says Spawn 299 SDCC is on fire. On fire. I think I did see something about that as I was kind of scrolling through some things. So Vika's trying to start a fight with me. He is trying to start a fight. He just said Spawn could totally take Spidey. Oh, Vika, don't pick a fight with me, my friend. Chris Barrett says Spawn is a mix of Spider-Man and Batman. Could be. Just wait until She-Spawn comes out, says Universe X. You guys are awesome. It was groundbreaking when they did. Randy Resnake, excellent point here. He says it was groundbreaking when they did it back in the 90s. And I completely agree. That it was groundbreaking. These guys did something that had not been done, that I think has helped. I mean, aren't they like the third largest publisher right now behind Image and Marvel? That is impressive. If you look at the fact that Marvel is about to celebrate 80 years and Image has been around 27 and they are in third place, that is impressive. It really is impressive what those guys did. It is a testament to the creativity, the initiative, the business savvy. And I mean, Todd McFarlane is an absolute beast with his toy line and all the other. He looked at toys and was like, I can do better. He's like, these are garbage. I can do better. And he did better. The guy is killing it. I mean, I have his signature on books in my room. So never am I attempting to besmirch Todd McFarlane, because I definitely dig the guy. Brickman Studio says, I think I'll pick up 300, find number one, and call it a day. Brother, if it was me, I would pick up 300 and 301 and number one, because again, I think Spawn 301 is the one that actually breaks the record. 301 is the one where now this is the longest running creator-owned comic in history. 301 to me is the significant money book, not 300. I think 300 is hype. I think 301 is the significant one. But at the end of the day, we're going to see what the market thinks, right? And if the market decides that 300 is it, then 300 is it. But from where I'm sitting, 301 is the significant thing. But we shall see. We shall see how it plays out. Scrolling through, Wayne McDonald was asking, isn't CBSI calling this the number one this week? I'm guessing you're talking about the SDCC Spawn 299. Scrolling through some of the comments here. Sith Lord, how you doing, my friend? Daniel, how you doing, my friend? Just a little podcast, how you doing? Have a number one, but no newsstand. I think I have a number one, but not a newsstand either. And I'd like to get a newsstand because when you look at that cover, it is a gorgeous cover. Spawn number one, which sold 1.7 million copies back in the day, is a nice cover. But when you see the newsstand, it's that newsstand that makes that cover really different and distinctive. And I don't have a copy of it with the newsstand. I'd like to get it. But to be honest with you, I struggle with paying the price for that newsstand. I do. I struggle with paying the price for that one. But if there is a Spawn number one to have, it would probably be the newsstand. It would probably be that. So, Rush Die Hard is saying $60 to get in. No, thank you. You can go to a comic shop for free. I guess he's talking about SDCC or one of the cons. scrolling through some of the comments here. So there you go. So I just wanted to jump on here real quick and talk a little bit about that, because I've seen some noise out there about this whole Spawn 300 versus Amazing Spider-Man 300. And I just wanted to kind of talk just briefly about that. I think that each one of these comics is a milestone in and of itself that can stand on its own. Trying to draw a comparison from one to the other, I struggle with that. I really do. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me just a little bit. Remember that tomorrow we are doing the Ready, Set, Go preview show. And that's a show where I basically give you a heads up on all the crazy stuff that is going to be happening from the channel over the course of the coming week. And then I also give away a really cool book, and I don't have it in arm's reach, but the book that we are giving away tomorrow is X-Men number 101. It is an awesome book. It really is an awesome book that I picked up in my collection probably a year ago almost. But we're going to be giving away a really nice copy of X-Men 101, sponsored by Go Collects. If you guys get a chance, make sure that you enter the giveaway for that. The giveaway wraps up tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. And then we do the live drawing at 7:30-ish tomorrow night. So anyway, with that, I'm going to wrap this thing up. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me just a little bit. And if you need me, be sure to reach out to me at Regie Collects on Instagram, and regiecollects@gmail.com.